Peggy, we've been friends for, God, almost a decade now, and I love your leadership. You're on the cutting edge of so many different technologies, and you jumped into humanoid robotics.
Yes.
Quite the challenging area to kick off. What brought you into humanoid robotics? What attracted you to jump in with agility robotics and Digit?
Well, I'm an electrical engineer by background, and I've always loved hardware, and particularly hardware at the cutting edge. So early in my career, many moons ago, I was at Qualcomm during the mobile revolution. So I got to see all of that unfold, going from just voice phones to computers in our pocket. So being at that cutting edge is just something I'm attracted to. So when I saw the opportunity with agility, I went there.
Yeah, amazing. Now, over the last, I think it's 6 months, Agility's gone from pilot program to multi-fleet deployment. What's evolved that's made it possible for you to actually begin to roll this thing out?
Well, a few things, obviously AI. When we first built this robot, it was what's called classically controlled. And so engineers had to program every step of what the robot did. And when AI came on, it made it much faster and easier to teach it new skills. So that's been a real catalyst for the humanoid industry.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to see leaps and bounds as our AI models get more and more powerful.
And so, Digit, and we'll see Digit in a moment, looks different than a bunch of other humanoid robots.
Yes.
And can you talk about what the design trades you made and what it's specifically built and intended for?
So Digit was built for work. And the reason is because when the company started, it was building robots for academia and sending them into, building a lot of new roboticists, learning on our robots. But when they started to look for use cases, they decided that, and this was before I joined the company, where it was needed was where we have labor shortages, which tends to be very manual, repetitive type of jobs. So that's what they built Digit for. Digit is a powerful piece of machinery.
Yes.
It can lift heavy things. It can live inside of our world that has basically aisles built for humans, shelves at human height, that sort of thing. So we decided that was the entry point. Eventually, we'll come into the consumer space down the road, but right now, is where they are.
And so, AI destroying jobs gets all the headlines, right? But
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is there's still a significant number of jobs that need fulfillment.
Yeah, basically in these kind of logistics and warehousing type jobs, very, very hard to fill those sorts of roles. There's about 1 million just in the US unfilled, and it's increasing. And kind of the COVID period supercharged that because we all expect our detergent and our shampoo to be delivered very quickly. That puts a big pressure on those facilities. And so there's more and more jobs open. There's an aging workforce. Young people don't like those jobs, don't want to go in there. And so those are sort of the headwinds to fulfilling those jobs. And then overall, a falling birth rate. So there's a structural economic problem that we have.
It's interesting, right? Because all of us here love our jobs. We love what we're doing. And maybe we dreamed about the jobs we're doing now. A lot of the jobs out there in society, people never dreamed about doing it as a child.
Right.
It's jobs they have to do to put food on the table or get insurance for their family. The jobs that are dull, dangerous, or dirty, as they say, and which has a perfect opportunity. What did you end up doing as your AI solution behind Digit?
So we basically used reinforcement learning to train Digit early on, going back maybe 3-4 years. And that helps sort of with the limbs and the smoothness and the operation. But when LLMs came about a couple years back, we decided to be very agnostic about them. We're not sure which LLMs are actually going to be the right ones to use in the robotics industry. So we're agnostic. And sometimes we're running Claude, sometimes we're running Google's Gemini. It's just to ensure that we have the best available at any time. So our strategy has been to be very agnostic.
And you're training the robot through verbal conversation. You're saying, go pick up this and move it over there versus programming that. How do you?
We do a little bit of both. So we do something called learning by demonstration. So we first demonstrate, and the computer can see. It has computer vision, so it can see what the activity is. We do it over and over and over again. You can also what's called teleop the robot. Although when we operate, we're autonomous. So we come into a facility and we start working autonomously. We can do a fair amount of teaching by using teleoperations, which is a human who is interacting.
Demonstrates it and got that.
Right,
Amazing.
right.
Interesting. All right. So I'm, over the last year, I've seen a lot of agility robotics and Amazon conversation. So it seemed like a really important customer for you. And I remember seeing Amazon going to deliver its drivers sort of augmented reality glasses that it says, okay, put the package over there, or there's a dog in that yard, or whatever. And I was like, Amazon's getting training data for its future robot fleet.
A lot of that data can be gathered right now with the activities they're doing today. But Amazon's been a great partner for us. They are, the best at what they do. And so us partnering them has made us build a stronger robot, a robot that's super safe, that you have the highest in the industry level of safety that the robots have to operate in. Because these are big, powerful...
They're powerful industrial robots.
Industrial robots, yeah. So we need to ensure that that safety is top of mind.
Yeah. And you're moving from a caged environment to an open environment now.
Yes. And the reason for that is you can do much more if you come outside of the work cell, of which right now, when humanoids are operating in these facilities, they have to operate inside of a work cell. And some of this video, you'll see small cages around, because just like when you go into a factory, you will have a lot of moving automation. You need to stay away from it. It's the same with these robots that are, Digit is waking up here right now.
Hello, Digit.
It is a powerful piece of machinery. So we don't have a safety cage around it right now, which is why Peter's 6 feet or so away from him. We want to keep this guy safe. But eventually, we are, by the end of this year, we will have the first safety certified humanoid robot to operate in these environments, which means as a human approaches the humanoid, it has to take action to bring itself down to the ground and ensure that no harm is done, and also not drop the payload, whatever it's carrying.
Yeah, I mean, what does Digit weigh roughly?
About 200 pounds.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the other humanoid robots that you're going to see and hear are, in the 70, 80 pound category, and don't have as much mechanical torque built in. So
yeah, Digit, this one can lift about 35 pounds, and our next generation, our 5th generation, the company's been around for about 10 years. I've only been CEO for 2, but it's been around for 10 years. So on the 5th generation, it'll lift 50 pounds, which is about OSHA limits. And so it can literally step in and do this very manual work that they can't find people to step into.
Yeah. I am curious about your current production plans. Talk to me about how many exist, how many you're going to be building.
Yeah. So we have this one, and then our 5th generation are our first commercial robots. So previous to that, it was onesie-twosies. We have built a factory in Salem, Oregon that can produce up to 10,000 robots a year, which we see as the near-term type of volume that will be needed. We have had literally every Fortune 500 company who's involved in any sort of material handling reach out. The automotives, a lot of the pharmaceuticals, they're all moving things around. Obviously, warehouses, third-party logistics providers, all of them need this type of work. So we built a factory that can supply that, and we're ready.
And so what do you imagine your production rate will be in 26, 27, 28?
So 26, this year, we'll be building this robot, which is still in the safety cage.
What generation robot is this?
This is 4.
Number 4, okay.
4, yeah. So we've learned a lot along the way. We've been able to take cost out. Digit is showing off here now. We've been able to, the actuators are the motors that make every limb move. We've learned a lot there, so we've really worked on bringing the price down. And our 5th generation coming out next year will be the one that scales because it's outside of the work cell. So you can send it down to the loading dock to pick something up, and it'll move amongst humans to get down there. And that's when we'll start to see hundreds and then eventually thousands.
Who in the room here is the ideal customer that should come out? We're gonna have Digit out in the hallway after this during the break, and so who should come out and connect with you and your team?
So really anybody who has a need for moving material around, and typically heavy material, bulky material, and if you're facing a labor shortage in those areas, that's where we're serving first. But because of AI, Digit's learning all the time, we're adding new skills all the time, and it's continuing to expand its abilities. So certainly come by and be introduced to Digit, and you can get an idea of how powerful this is up close and in person.
Yeah. I believe that the U.S. government has started, let's start with this way. In China, there is massive support for robotics companies from the government, creating almost, test facilities and cities where robots are being designed, built, and the supply chain is extraordinary. Where are we with that regard in the United States, and what's coming?
So a couple things. We have an administration that's very focused on the humanoid robots not going the same way drones did. We used to have actually a drone industry in the US, and largely it's gone offshore. They're trying to prevent that same thing from happening to humanoids because these are homegrown factories here. They want to ensure that this industry is flourishing, thrives in the U.S. So they have been working. In fact, there's meetings today in Washington on that topic that our folks are attending to ensure that we get the support we need. And we're not talking subsidies. We're just talking, some attention to the supply chain that we need, that sort of thing. And they've been great, to tell you the truth. It's been really refreshing to work with them, and we hope that they continue to knock down any obstacles in our way.
So in China, I think there was the Chinese government called it a robot bubble because there were like 160 humanoid robot companies. I mean, when the supply chain is that good, every entrepreneur and their friend can build a company. Obviously, we saw Unitree yesterday, which is one of the lead companies. They're here in our tech booth as well. How many humanoid robot companies do you think will eventually play out in the United States? Do you have a sense?
I don't have a sense. I will say they will focus on different areas.
Yeah.
As you can see, we're an industrial robot. We're going to take a certain part of that market. Others want to come into the home, and that's going to be a different type of robot. It'll be smaller, lighter, much less of an impact if it falls, and robots fall often. So I think there'll be different segments of the market. But a lot of people say, why humanoids at all? It's because if you're going to offload labor, whether it's at your house or in a factory, you need a device that can go where humans go. So the aisles are narrow. And
I have, I don't know if Salim is in the room here right now or not. He and I have a debate on our Moonshots podcast all the time about why just 2 arms, why not 6 arms, why not 4 legs?
Well, okay, here's something to point out. Our legs are backwards.
Yes.
You might have noticed. Some people call them the bird legs. But as it turns out, when they're doing their work and they're bending down, the knees would get in the way of the shelf that they were putting the part or the box on. And so the roboticists turn the knee there, so you can see Now that is a way that you can bend down and without bumping the shelf with your knee.
I do
you can do
deep
that.
knee bends like that every morning.
Yeah, that's something that
Digit's
robots
posture
are
is
good at.
much better than my posture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digit, you see a lot of dancing robots. Digit doesn't really dance, and I'm always saying to our engineers, "Can't you make Digit dance a little bit?" So they did the other day. It's really a goofy dance, but it's.
We're going to be bringing
saw.
Bernd Bornick, the CEO of 1X Technologies, out in just a minute. What I love, and then we're bringing out the CEO of Clone Robotics after that. I've chosen here 3 very different robot designs to help the membership understand sort of the evolutionary tree of what's going on.
Yeah, and that's what we'll see in this market. Robots designed for certain things, different sizes, different capabilities.
Yeah. Well, Peggy, thank you for coming back again. When we meet in the lobby after, during our hour-long break where members can connect with you, what will they see? Who's going to be there on your team?
We have a handful of robot wranglers here. They're just bringing Digit. This is how Digit goes back down to the ground in a graceful way. Yeah. And ask them questions. This is a fascinating field. It's almost like autonomous vehicles, but in a different way. Very complex. So
one last question that was asked from my members on Zoom this morning. Investment opportunities. Where are you on capitalization? How much more money do you need? What are you looking for?
We're doing fairly well right now. We will be raising later this year. So far, the company has been able to deploy robots enough to have some amount of revenue. We need to scale. Once we come out of the workcell, that opens up a lot of markets beyond what we're doing now. So then we'll be back out on the market raising.
Amazing. What's your valuation today?
Right now, we're about $2 billion.
About $2 billion.
Yeah.
Awesome. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for an amazing CEO, Peggy Johnson.
Thank you.